So now we're gonna figure out the scarf joint on this. I have this marked for where the 0 fret is, and then I went 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, 1/4 of an inch past that for where the nut or the string guide is going to be. And I'm doing a 10-degree scarf joint. That's what I like to do, 10 degrees, not too much. We'll take that right from this line. Whoops. And that's our scarf right there. Last time I used a Japanese handsaw to do my scarf joint. I didn't have my bandsaw at that point, but I'm going to do this one on the bandsaw. I got a nice 1/2 inch resawing bit. We'll see how that goes. Didn't look like it was totally vertical. Got a little bit of a corner here, but we'll should be able to fix that okay. And that's our scarf once I clean it up. Bird's eye maple is not fun to plane. I have this low angle jack plane here. I'm evening these up. Unfortunately, when I cut my scarf joint, apparently my neck blank was not totally square to the table. So my edge was a little bit on an angle, but a little planing and then a little bit of belt sanding. And we're getting this to match up nicely. I'm planning on an angle because of the wood grain. Kind of hard to keep these two clamped together also without the clamps being in the way. Okay, I think that's coming along nicely. Sometimes lutherie involves problem solving or fixing mistakes because things happen. So when I cut the scarf joint on this neck, it was the first time I used this particular new bandsaw of mine, and I had just gotten a nice 1/2-inch blade, very nice blade. I had been doing my scarf joints by hand with a Japanese pull saw. Works great. I used to do it on a Delta bandsaw back in the 90s. So I practiced on a piece of wood, seemed like it worked okay. What I neglected to do was I should have had this neck blank clamped against a large block that's squared to the table just to maintain its uprightness, which I thought it was on this edge, but clearly it wasn't. So this got cut on a slight skew. So I had to clean it up I used a belt sander and a plane. It's not perfectly flat yet, but it will be, to get it more back and square. And in doing so, I lost about this much space from where the scarf starts, right here, to the edge of the fretboard, where the string retainer nut is going to be, because this has a 0 fret. So we're this far away from where we should be. It's about 5/8 of an inch. Oh, I think that was maybe 40 millimeters, something like that. So that, of course, is a bit of a problem. And the fretboard is already where it belongs on the other side. However, because this top of the neck, or the headstock, because the top of the headstock is going to have veneers on it, it will bring the level up, and that can be, if you're cut on an angle like this, that will fit nicely under there, and then continue down on the 10-degree angle, and everything should work out fine. There's going to be a walnut veneer on the front of this, and some layers, or walnut head plate, I should say, which will be thick like this one. This one's a little bit too small, so I'm using another one. There'll be a piece of walnut on the front, about 1/8 of an inch thick, and some veneers under it, and that should make up this gap here that we have. Because normally my scarf joint starts right there. but because I made this thinner, it moved that backwards a little bit. It'll work out, but these are the kind of things you have to look out for when you're working on this stuff, because sometimes it just doesn't work out exactly the way you expect it to. I have a 1/4-inch spiral router bit in here, and I'm going to route for the truss rod. Starting off little, about 1/8 of an inch depth. I'll work in multiple passes. So I brought the bit up to 3/16 of an inch now. It's going slightly off center. I guess one of these pieces of wood isn't quite centered, but that's it's very, very slight. Won't really matter. 3/8 is the desired depth. We'll take it to 1/4. And there we go. I just have to widen it out a little bit here where the adjusting nut is. And that's our truss rod route. Next we're going to be doing the 2 carbon fiber routes. Now I have a slightly larger bit in here. I'm going to bring to up to 7/16 of an inch for the wider portion of the truss rod. That should do it right there. And we have to come in how far? Let's see. I guess about to here. Start that a little lower. Almost there. I'll use a chisel to take it out a little bit. That's the closest bit I had. I did use a larger router bit, and in fact I used two. Okay, so hopefully this is a better angle than the last one. Next up, I'm going to route for carbon fiber rods. I get these from Dragon Plate. They're an 1/8 of an inch thick, about 1/4 of an inch high, I guess. They're going to go roughly in that area where the purple heart is, on either side of the truss rod. I could move it in. I'll leave it out there. And I have an 1/8 of an inch bit in there. So that's going to be the next thing to do. So I have it marked off where I'm going to start and stop, because it's not from the very end. And I'm just going to drop it right on there. Let me see about how deep I'm going to need to go. These are 11:30 seconds. That's a very odd. So a little more than 1/4 of an inch. He also very well could be in metric. So what would they be in metric? It would be 8.5 millimeters deep. And that's like about 3/8. So 3/8 is going to be the final dimension for the depth. My digital calipers are entirely too sensitive. I really packed the sawdust in there. Kind of surprising. The last bit was a nice spiral bit that evacuated the dust, but this one didn't. It's rather tight too. Can't tell if I have to go a little deeper or the slot's just still filled with, it's filled with sawdust. So I'm going to have to scrape out something. I'm using a file, broke the tip off the file too. And it's definitely deep enough. Well, now we'll do the other side. And here's our 2 carbon fiber rods, which will now get epoxied in. I still have to clean that a little bit to get these to go in all the way. It might be a little short also. Yep, I guess that rod's a little bit longer. So let me lengthen this one just a tiny bit. And here's our carbon fiber and truss rod installed. Alrighty, it's time to glue our scarf joint together. So I have them lined up where I want it, and I have a clamp on it. I'm going to drill a couple of small holes and stick a couple of brads in to keep everything aligned. So I will pick a spot right around here, I guess. That'll work. And I have a small brad nail. And I will do one on the other side. Clamp's kind of in the way. We'll do one right here. And it just keeps things aligned. Obviously it's not going to hold it up, but it keeps things aligned while we get it glued up and for location. Then I'll pull them out. How am I going to get that back on there? That's the question. Now let's see if I can find the holes. Not the usual way I do it, but I probably do it differently every time. I should have cut the brads a little shorter. It would have made it easier. And there we have it. Yeah, we're getting some nice glue squeeze out now. Fit another one in? Probably not. I think that's pretty good. Now, off to something else. So the next day, I took the clamps off. I cleaned up the front a little bit on the belt sander. Now we're still left with this issue where the scarf started too far back because of the this being a little bit twisted, and that was further exasperated by and that was further pushed back when I was sanding the front of this, because it lowered that a little. So I think what I'm going to do, I do have a head plate that's going to go on, which would be this thick. Now this would bring that up, but then it's starting awfully far back. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I have a small 10-degree wedge, which was from another neck. It was actually from the Blackbird base, from the last build. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue this in here. It'll just be a very small little wedge of maple underneath the fretboard on the very end. I will cut that off flush for the nut to go in, and everything should work out fine like that. A little wax paper here so the fretboard doesn't get glued to it. Not yet, anyway. And I will be leveling the top of that to match the rest of the fretboard. You gotta be a little creative sometimes. It's my first time running into this situation. And here's the finished result. This will be leveled out a little more, and once it's cut to the width of the fretboard, it'll be less obvious. Next time we'll be gluing the head plate and the back strap onto the headstock, as well as the headstock ears, and getting it ready for the fretboard to be glued on. See you then.